The 1990s, your favorite decade of anime, or anything really. The decade everyone feels a sense of nostalgia towards, even those who never even lived through it. Gen Z, I'm looking at you, jamming out to city pop or some old school hip hop, watching bootleg VHS tapes on television sets heavier than most furniture, and munching on some snacks that had way too many questionable ingredients. Just living in the moment, honestly. The 1990s, in our humble opinion, truly stands out as the defining era for Japanese anime. During this time, Japanese anything was becoming a hot commodity in the West, largely because this was the decade when Japanese culture began flooding outward, crossing oceans at an unprecedented pace. This cultural export didn't just bring media and entertainment, it built the bridges that would spark conversations and arguments around the globe. Like who would win in a 1v1, Superman or Goku? Goku, obviously. So, for you my dear viewer, we wanted to craft something special to honor this series and creators that shaped our own understanding of anime. Because, let's face it, if there's one thing the internet desperately needs, it's another hour-long video about something only a bunch of nerds care about. But, I digress. Anime in the 90s can generally be boiled down to three critical shifts. First, a noticeable move towards darker, edgier, counterculture narratives. Secondly, a revolution in animation techniques. And finally, anime's rapid ascent into becoming an economic powerhouse, both domestically in Japan and internationally in the West. Each anime I'll highlight in this series exemplifies these shifts in its own distinctive way, illustrating how every frame, every episode, and every creative talent involved help mold the anime landscape we appreciate today. So, without further ado, this is the animes that define the 90s. Now, if you're anything like me, a 90s kid growing up in North America, your older cousins or siblings probably put you onto most of the cool stuff you enjoyed. Remember, the internet wasn't the vast repository of knowledge we have today. Word of mouth was king, and nothing spread faster through the classrooms and playgrounds than edgy, boundary-pushing anime that stood in stark contrast to our run-of-the-mill, familiar Saturday morning cartoons. Sure, Rugrats and Recess was great, but let's face it, TJ Detweiler never squared off against monstrous alien threats in Neo-Tokyo or had ninjas plotting his downfall from treetops. Anime offered something uniquely exhilarating and just plain different. For me, anime wasn't just entertainment, it was formative. The series I'll be showcasing from this decade largely shaped my tastes and even influenced how I engage with storytelling to this day. This is precisely why I feel so strongly about representing this influential era with care and respect. Before jumping in, let me lay out some clear criteria for how I constructed this list, and perhaps, more importantly, clarify what didn't make it and why. Firstly, while everything here is deeply researched, passionately debated, and thoroughly thought through, it ultimately comes down to my personal taste. I'm not claiming absolute objectivity. This is anime, it's not rocket science, so if you have differing opinions or just flat out think I'm wrong, feel free to dive into the comments and tell me why. I'd love to hear your passionate commentary. Secondly, your favorite anime might not make the list, and that's perfectly fine. Honestly, some of my own favorites didn't make it either. Shout out to my beloved G Gundam. As much as I love seeing Neo Netherlands Gundam with its massive windmill strapped to its back, it wasn't exactly a defining cultural moment. Sorry, my guy. Finally, the anime chosen for each year might not be your favorite, or even mine, and it might not have been the biggest blockbuster hit of the year, but it did fundamentally impact the cultural zeitgeist, reshaping perceptions of the medium in meaningful ways much more important than numbers or money. One anime per year, chosen based on its original airing. With that bit of housekeeping out of the way, let's rewind the clock just a bit, starting not in 1990, but one crucial year earlier, 1989.
This new year, we toasted the new peacefulness around the globe.
Before we dive into the iconic anime culture of the 1990s, I think it's important we wind it back to the year of 1989. It truly was a remarkable year, and it was this year that essentially laid the foundation, not only for anime as a cultural phenomenon, but also for Japan itself. If we're really going to understand what makes the 90s so damn special, we need to talk about the incredible highs and inevitable lows that preceded them. Japan in 1989 was riding an economic wave of near mythical proportions. Later known as the pinnacle of the bubble economy, this special time in history had everyone convinced that the nation was unstoppable. And who could blame them? Real estate values had soared to astronomical levels, luxury goods filled the shopping streets of Ginza, and corporate spending knew virtually no limits. This high was fueled by rock-bottom interest rates and sky-high consumer confidence. The Japanese stock market created an illusion of endless prosperity. For the average Japanese citizen, and indeed to outside observers, it seemed the good times would, and could, never end. There was a mood of widespread national optimism within Japan, a kind of invincible swagger. But, as we know all too well, nothing stays up forever, and the higher we are, the greater we fall. For a deeper dive into the mechanics of this rise and crash, I highly recommend checking out This That TV's insightful exploration of Japan's economic miracle and subsequent downturn. But, for our purposes, let's get back to how this unique atmosphere of boundless optimism and approaching uncertainty became the perfect backdrop for one of the most culturally transformative animes ever made. Dragonball Z debuted in April 1989, adapted from Akira Toriyama's groundbreaking manga. It wasn't just another anime, it was a spirit bomb in the industry. Coming off the whimsical, youthful energy of its predecessor, the original Dragon Ball, which had enchanted viewers with Goku's childhood escapades in a fun, vibrant fantasy setting based on Journey to the West. Dragon Ball Z, however, was different, and from the onset pivoted boldly into darker, more mature territory. Toriyama, in an inspired storytelling decision, allowed his leading character Goku to grow up alongside his audience. So Dragon Ball Z continues 5 years where the original Dragon Ball had left off. Millions of kids who had spent their elementary school years rooting for the playful adventures of young Goku were now teenagers and were ready for something edgier and more dramatic. Goku was no longer a carefree boy chasing magical orbs. He was now an adult with real responsibilities, a family, a son named Gohan, and the weight of Earth's survival resting on his overly developed, sane shoulders. For fans of the original Dragon Ball, the increasingly mature storytelling direction introduced in Dragon Ball Z reflected the audience's own evolving tastes and expectations. But Toriyama didn't just stop at making Goku a more developed protagonist. Dragon Ball Z introduced a revolution in narrative dynamics that shaped anime forever. Foremost among these was the iconic rivalry between Goku and Vegeta. Before Vegeta, rivals in anime were often simplistic, merely villains to overcome and be done with. Vegeta's character, however, was complex, proud, ambitious, conflicted, and strangely sympathetic. This nuanced relationship laid the blueprint for countless anime rivalries that followed, setting a template that's still heavily used in the interrelationship dynamics for some of our favorite animes today. One of the more enduring additions to anime that DBZ gave us was the quintessential tournament arc. Loved and hated, but definitely recognized, this timeless narrative trope was popularized by none other than Dragon Ball Z. The show's depiction of upcoming martial arts tournaments, intense training sequences, and power scaling was just, chef's kiss. The intense backdrops would always be followed by stunning fight sequences and epic battles between the Z fighters versus the villains of the saga. And of course, let us not forget, amidst all this action, the now iconic fit checks and unforgettable aura farming montages. I mean, what more could you ask for? By creating these tropes and popularizing them, Toriyama-san created a format that would dominate the shōnen genre of storytelling for decades, and in doing so solidified Dragon Ball Z as arguably the most influential shōnen of all time. In terms of reception, from its very first episodes, Dragon Ball Z became an absolute sensation in Japan. Its ascent was meteoric, perfectly capturing the high-energy optimism of a country at its economic apex. Goku's relentless pursuit to surpass his own limits resonated deeply with audiences who were, themselves, in the midst of a cultural high, always reaching for something greater. But Dragon Ball Z wasn't simply a product of boundless optimism, it subtly hinted at darker days ahead. As the show progressed, villains like Frieza, Cell, and Majin Buu became increasingly existential threats, escalating the stakes dramatically. The increased tension, threats of annihilation, and apocalyptic confrontations in hindsight can be seen as a foreshadowing metaphor for the cultural and economic turmoil Japan would soon face. Internationally, however, Dragon Ball Z's explosive popularity didn't truly ignite until several years after its initial airing. In fact, North American audiences wouldn't experience Funimation's now iconic English dub until 1996, ironically the very year that the show concluded its original run in Japan. Remember, this was long before simultaneous global streaming and instant digital releases. Anime traveled slowly across oceans via VHS tapes, syndicated television runs, and word-of-mouth hype. Dragon Ball Z's delayed yet profound impact outside Japan demonstrated anime's remarkable global resonance, setting the stage for the cross-cultural exchange that would become synonymous with anime in the late 90s and beyond. And now, as we close out 1989, we find ourselves at a precipice. Japan, much like Goku before his toughest battles, was about to face an unprecedented challenge. The soaring economy was starting to teeter, and optimism was wavering. A massive dark cloud had formed above, and a storm loomed just over the horizon. A turbulent decade was about to begin, filled with uncertainty, change, and profound transformation. Welcome to 1990.